Welcome back to Old School Sports and our OOTP 23 playthrough of the Pittsburgh Pirates. We are about to get the 2042 season underway. It's been a mixed 4 years as general manager of the Pirates. You can see we're performing better than they did in the years before we took over. But we've had a losing record, winning record, losing record, winning record, 2 playoff appearances, but first round exits in both. NLDS exit when we won the division 3 seasons ago. And then last year we lost in a wild card series to the Mets. But we have made some progress with this team. Budget moving in the right direction. Attendance generally moving in the right direction. Attendance could be down a bit this year. Our fan interest isn't all that strong. Fan loyalty is still pathetic. And, we'll have to see. Hopefully we can have another winning season. Hopefully we can have another playoff season. That's what ownership is expecting from us. And that's really what we've built this team to try to do. It's going to be the final season with our pitching staff largely intact. Tony Santana, we do have signed to a long-term deal. Heriberto Rosales, our number 5 starter, we have signed to the next few years at a very modest amount. But Ricky Gotti is in his final year of arbitration. He's going to be a free agent after this season. And he is looking for close to $24 million a year. So it's going to be hard for us, if not impossible for us, to bring back the 2-time All-Star. Bobby Gonzalez, who's been a solid pitcher for us, is the veteran on the staff. He has the ability to opt out of his contract next year, which is certainly possible. And also generally seems to be trending more towards a back end of the rotation kind of starter as he's gotten into his early 30s. But we could be without him next year. And then Greg Gaylord is really a guy that we prefer in the bullpen. He is in the starting rotation right now. You can see he saved 44 games for us last year, but he did start 6 games for us. He's in the starting rotation for us now simply because Luis Longoria, the brilliant rookie pitcher from last year, is out with an elbow strain for another couple weeks. He's fragile in terms of his injury proneness. So when we think about what this pitching staff might look like next year, we've got Santana on top. We've got Rosales at number 5. We hope Longoria is healthy, but we could be without Gotti and Gonzalez. And we could, potentially use Gaylord, but I think we'd prefer to have him in the pen. So as we get ready for this season, I'm thinking about doing something dramatic. And those of you who followed my Kansas City playthrough that eventually evolved into this playthrough after I left the Royals may remember that we traded away one of the top prospects in all of baseball. He may have been the top prospect in baseball when we traded him away. Maxime Wonderboy de la Cruz, who's still only 27 years old at this point, even though it's a long time. We traded him away 2034, so over 8 years ago when we were still the GM of Kansas City, we traded him away. And Maxime de la Cruz is off to a really nice start in his career. You can see he's won a couple of batting titles, 320 career hitter, has some power. Part of the reason we traded him away was he's fragile, and he was back then. He's not particularly exceptional defensively, does have a great personality, not a lot of speed, not a very good bunter, but obviously off-the-charts contact and very good home run power. An incredibly valuable player, and let's see. Yeah, so we did trade him, and he was the number 3 prospect in the majors at the time we traded him, but you can see he was the number 2, number 3, number 1, number 2, number 6 prospect at times. This was clearly one of the top prospects in baseball. And we traded him away for Eddie Chavera because we felt like we needed a solid starter. And you can see even at 34 years old today, Chavera is still an Iron Man in terms of his injury proneness. Plus stuff, plus movement, plus control, a nice 4-pitch arsenal. And he was an incredibly important player for Kansas City, was part of the 3 consecutive world championships that we had in Kansas City, and he won another one last year with the Yankees. But his 6 years in Kansas City, you can see he pitched, about 200 innings a year, struck out 185 to 190 batters a year on average, was going 14-9, 3.97 ERA, putting up a WAR of 4.5 plus each season. So he was an incredibly effective pitcher. Is he as exceptional as Maxime de la Cruz? Probably not, but I think this was an example of a trade that really worked out well for both teams. The Phillies got a player to build around for the future, and the Royals got a player who was really a critical member of 3 consecutive world championship teams. You can see in those years with Kansas City. Had some pretty solid seasons. And what I am thinking about doing with the Pirates now, because of the issue that I brought up, Gotti is almost certainly gone. The only way we can possibly bring him back next year is if this team goes out, wins over 100 games, wins the World Series, so we have a long playoff run generating tons of money, and then Bob Nutting decides to give us a $15 or $20 million bump to our budget. That is literally the only scenario. Well, there's 2 scenarios. That is one scenario by which we could keep Ricky Gotti. The other scenario by which we could keep Ricky Gotti is if we wanted to slash our scouting and development budgets significantly next year. Those to me are the only 2 ways we can possibly keep him. So he is almost certainly gone, and Bobby Gonzalez can opt out. And as I talked about with Luis Longoria, I love the guy, but he's already fragile. He's injured already. I just don't know how much we can count on him. So I want to build my team through pitching, and I feel like we've got an excess of excellent minor league outfielders right now. So what I'm thinking about doing is potentially trading away one of the top prospects in baseball for some help for the pitching staff. Similar in a way to that Maxime de la Cruz for Eddie Chavera trade I did when I was GM of the Royals 8 seasons ago, it looks like. And the reason why I'm very amenable to trading away an outfielder is that we've got Isaiah Hill, only 26 years old, 3 years in the majors, has been exceptional. All-Star every year, Silver Slugger every year, 2-time MVP, and a Rookie of the Year. And we did get him signed to an extension. Now, granted, I don't know if we're going to be able to afford these out years when he's making 29, 32, 36, and potentially $40 million a year. But certainly for the next few years, we should be able to fit that contract in, even in Pittsburgh. So we've got left field covered. We've got right field covered with Alex Perkins, who is also a Rookie of the Year last season. So he's probably covering right field for us the next couple years. We've got Ignacio Carbajal signed, who really is our backup center fielder, but we did end up having to put Ramon Herrera, who we have signed for a couple years as our starting center fielder, to a very reasonable contract. He's on the IL right now, but we've got those 2. And then we also still have Alfredo Velasquez, 26-year-old with good power. So we've got plenty of outfielders at the major league level, and honestly, with the exception of Carbajal and Herrera, they're in their mid-20s and pretty young. So despite the fact that we've got a ton of talent coming up, you can see 5 of our top 6 prospects are outfielders, because Henry Gonzalez is really an outfielder. We're just trying to train him at first base to make him a little more versatile. But he will ultimately, unless we end up in a very weird situation, be an outfielder for us almost all the time. But he's the number 13 prospect in baseball. We picked him number 1 overall in 2038. He's basically, if you look at his ratings, ready for the majors at this point, more than ready for the majors. we're going to try to keep the clock from ticking on him as long as possible. He did hit only 263 in 53 games in AAA last year, so going to start there to get him a little more seasoning. Hopefully, continue to develop, particularly the home run power, which is the area that he's lagging behind in. See if he can become a better first baseman. But clearly, if the team gets off to a poor start or we have some injury issues, Gonzalez is pretty much ready to plug in. Angel Aguilar is the number 4 prospect in baseball. He's durable. Looks like he could be a Maxime Cruz type hitter with contact that's off the chart. Even better home run power potentially. No speed, not a good bunter, not good defensively, but still, an exceptional player who's very close to major league ready. Julio Castillo was an international free agent signing for us last year. Loved the durability. Looks like a really good bat. Has speed. With those contact, gap power, and home run ratings and that speed, looks like he's going to be an extra base machine. Love the personality. Solid defensively. And then last but not least, Alex Ruacho is our number 1 pick, 4th overall from 2039. Probably not quite as impressive a hitting prospect as the other 3, but still has good speed, solid defensively, certainly someone who could help us. And then even Carlito Rivera, who was a scouting discovery just 4 months ago, number 99 prospect in baseball, also looks like he can be a respectable hitter, excellent defensively, good speed. So we have a surplus of young outfielders that we could potentially try to flip for a pitcher. And this may be controversial, but I am probably most willing to get rid of the top prospect, number 4 overall, Aguilar. He clearly has the worst speed of any of those 5 outfielders we looked at, the worst bunter. He's the worst defensively of all of those 5 players we looked at. Now, he is durable, and he does potentially have a monster bat if he completely develops with 80 contact, 70 home run power, 60-65 I. He conceivably is a player who's a perennial 300 hitter, competing for batting titles, hitting 30, 35, 40 plus home runs, and walking over 100 times a year, so a on-base percentage well into the 400s, which he did do back in Single A last year. No question that he is a awesome prospect. But he's basically on the same timeline as Gonzalez, and Gonzalez actually will walk even more. I agree that he is not as good a contact and power hitter, but Gonzalez is just so incredibly balanced as a hitter. He's got more speed, and when he ends up in the outfield, which is where he'll most likely be playing, he's better defensively. And since he's only in quotation marks viewed as the number 13 prospect in baseball, we may be able from some teams to get slightly more for Aguilar than Gonzalez. And then, Castillo is much younger. He's 5-6 years away. Also durable. Looks like he could be, if you were going to argue anyone is a better hitter potentially than Aguilar, it would be Castillo. He's got the speed, as I said, to be an extra base machine. Great personality, better defensively. Ruacho looks like certainly could be a very nice hitter. Love the speed, solid defensively, and a couple years younger. And then Rivera, who knows what he'll become. He's kind of the weakest of the prospects, but the best defensively, very good speed, and could be a plus hitter. He's just going to strike out a lot and not walk a ton. So I'm amenable to trading any of the 5 of them, but I tend to think we might get our most bang for the buck trading Aguilar. And I fully acknowledge he probably has the best bat, but the other 4 players all have acceptable to potentially very good / great bats, and they're all better defensively. They've all got more speed. although only one of them is durable. So you can see why Aguiar is a top prospect, but I am willing to consider moving on from him or any of the other guys that I just talked about, just because we don't need all of these outfielders. And I do see a critical need for a starting pitcher developing in this team as soon as, next year, and actually could be sooner if Longoria ends up with more serious injuries or we have another injury on the staff. So we've done a player search, basically looking for starting pitchers, including minor leaguers who all have at least above average potential stuff, movement, and control. And you can see there's a list of some players who, at least by the star ratings, look like interesting prospects. Now, some of these guys we can't even touch with Aguiar. John Westfield from the Red Sox looks like an incredible prospect. Has been up last year, put up a 3.54 ERA in 76 and a third innings. Great stamina, great at holding runners. Ground ball pitcher, throws in the high 90s. 5-pitch arsenal, above average stuff, movement, and control. Right now, we actually would need them to retain his contract, but you can see there's nothing we can do, and even if we put in Aguiar, there's nothing else that we can do to get a pitcher like that. And we found that with several of the top players on this list, unfortunately. But there are 5 guys that we can roughly get for Aguiar. Some of them we have to add in a little more. Some of them we can get straight up. And the ones who we can get straight up, maybe we can get a little bit more than even just a potential really solid pitcher. I'd say most of these guys' profile is a number 3 starter on a good team. But that's kind of the same model we followed with Eddie Chavera, and that worked out when we were GM at Kansas City. Westfield to me is more of a number 2, maybe even a number 1 guy, and you can see that we can't get him for Aguiar. We can't even get him for Aguiar, plus we need like at least 3 of the top prospects in our system to get him, so that price is too high. But there are some players who can potentially help us. Oh, and the other part of the search that I did that I might not have mentioned, players 25 and younger. So I'm looking for someone who can hopefully be a contributor for several seasons to this Pirates team. Hopefully 6 or 7 before they get to arbitration. And then in a best case scenario, it's somebody that we can sign to a long-term contract after that. So the oldest and most established prospect is Damon Romer. He's been up in Cleveland the last couple years, hit a 3.18 ERA, over 153 innings and 29 starts last year. You can see he's got a 4-pitch arsenal, above average stuff, movement, and control. He's durable. As I mentioned, he is the oldest of the prospects that I've identified. And the other thing I don't love about Romer, I can't actually even get him for Aguiar straight up. I'd have to add someone into the deal. And a pretty decent prospect into the deal in addition to Aguiar to get it done. But he is clearly major league ready, somewhat major league proven, plug and play kind of number 3, number 4 starter in a best case scenario if we really build a great staff around him that could be a pretty impactful player for us for the next few years. Tony Rivera from Kansas City is a guy that we can get straight up for Aguiar. He's the number 39 prospect in baseball. Like the stamina, love the ability to hold runners. He's still got some development to do, 24 years old. Like the fact that he's durable. Definitely will have plus movement. His stuff in control, average-ish now. Hopefully can get a little better than average. And he's already got an established 3-pitch arsenal that's major league quality. Did pitch 4 games for the Royals at the end of last season. And we can get him straight up for Aguiar. So we'd be trading the number 4 prospect for the number 39 prospect if we decided to bring on Rivera. Jose Montoya is only the number 74 prospect, a little younger, not even 24 years old yet. He is durable, and he jumped all the way from high A ball to the majors last year, where he had allowed 3 hits and no earned runs over 7 innings in his first major league performance. Like the fact that he profiles as someone with really good movement. Right now his stuff is average, his control is a little below average, but he's got room to grow according to both our scout and even the OSA. His fastball and his curveball are both well above major league quality at this point. Concern with him is that his slider isn't quite major league average yet, but if he develops that slider, he could be a really interesting pitcher. The fourth pitcher in the mix is Orlando Sanabria from the Mets, number 30 prospect. Love the work ethic, really good stamina, really good at holding runners. Potentially has really nice movement on his pitches, good control. Still has some development ahead of him. OSA is not quite as high on him as our scout is, but I tend to trust our scout. Issue with Sanabria, really like him a lot. But also, as with Romer, Aguilar alone will not get us Sanabria. We'll also need to add in another pretty decent prospect to be able to get him. And then last, but certainly not least, Jordan De Leon of the Nationals, 23-year-old, number 27 prospect in baseball. Low leadership isn't great, but he's a pitcher. He just needs to pitch. Potentially has the best movement of any of the pitchers we're looking at, and you can see that manifested itself with just 11 home runs allowed and 193 innings pitched between AA and AAA last year. 3-pitch arsenal, similar to the rest of the pitchers. He's definitely in the mix. So looking at these 5 guys, the 5 pitchers that we can, in 3 cases, get straight up for Aguilar. In 2 cases, need to add somebody else. I don't see huge differences between them. Certainly some that I like more than others. Romer, since we'd have to add another player, I'm going to pass on. I love the durability. He's got 4 pitches, which is rare among this crew. But he's also the oldest and most established. I feel like his floor is the highest of anybody, but his ceiling is the lowest of any of these pitchers, given that he's also the closest to arbitration, the closest to free agency, and we'd have to add in another player that's pretty good to get him. I think we take Romer off of the list. And Sanabria is kind of the same situation in that even offering the number 4 prospect in baseball isn't enough to get him straight up. I do like the fact that he's also going to have very good movement. He already has very good movement. Number 30 prospect in baseball. His stamina and hold runners combination is exceptional for a starting pitcher. Has high work ethic, feel pretty good that he's got another season in AAA ahead of him this year, and then he's going to be a big contributor at the major league level. But since we basically probably need to give up the number 4 prospect in baseball, and I can show you this, I don't have to be secretive about it, but Aguilar alone doesn't get the deal done. We also have to add in a decent pitching prospect in most cases, not necessarily a great prospect. And there is part of me that does look at the outfielder Omar Gines, who was our international free agent signing almost 4 seasons ago. Not a big time prospect at this point. We could throw him in, but otherwise, the pitchers are guys in our farm system who definitely look like they could be 4 or 5 starters for us down the line. A Bobby Astorga, Juan Bin Daoud, Greg Gaylord, who's already at the major league level. David Tinoco, third-round pick in 2039. Sal Valadez, second-round pick in 2038. None of these guys are sure things at this point, but they all have potential to develop into a back end of the rotation starter at the major league level. So having to not just put in the number 4 prospect in baseball, but to also have to include an okay outfield prospect in Omar Gines makes me kind of lean towards one of the other pitchers. I like Sanabria a lot, though. I do struggle with it because I feel like his ceiling is one of the best of anybody out there, but the price for him is definitely higher than the other players. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the other 3 players and just see if I know I can get any of them for Aguiar, kind of see if I can get some other players thrown in and try to maybe build a deal that way. And as I've gone through the list of the pitchers, I find myself drawn to Jose Montoya from the Angels system. I like the durability, like the stamina. He's one of the worst at holding runners, which isn't great. One of the younger guys, 23 years old, furthest from the majors, given that he spent most of last year in high A ball. And his prospect ranking of number 74 is the worst. Romer's an established major leaguer, but Rivera's number 39, Sanebria's number 30, De Leon is number 27. So he's not viewed as good a prospect as the others. My big concern about him is whether or not the slider develops. If that slider develops, even just to major league average to 50, he's got 3+ or average pitches at that point. Will have plus stuff, excellent movement, and can still get his control up. But the reason I'm leaning towards him is that I like all of these pitchers. They all have flaws here and there. The durability is a big factor in Montoya's favor. The fact that Romer has 4 pitches is a big factor in his favor. I think Sanebria's got the nastiest overall arsenal of anybody involved. But the price for Montoya is the most reasonable. And we've got a package together where we can actually get back another useful player, in my opinion. So if we're willing to give up Angel Aguiar, who is the number 4 prospect in baseball, picked right near the top of the draft 5 seasons ago, potentially durable, potentially a multi-time Silver Slugger winner, potentially a multi-time batting champion, a big-time prospect by any stretch, even though we don't love the mediocre defense and we don't love the poor speed, but certainly a top prospect. And as I talked about earlier, probably the best pure hitting prospect of the 5 outfielders we have, and that's why he's rated higher than any of them. But we can get Jose Montoya, who will slot right in at AAA this year, hopefully keep working on that slider and curve, get his control and his stuff a little better, and be ready to contribute at the major league level consistently by the end of this year. Number 74 prospect in baseball, so that's certainly, number 4 for 74. No one's going to be impressed with that. They are throwing in a little cash. And then they will also throw in third baseman Ethan Fox, who's not an exceptional prospect, but he's got a lot of things that I like about him. And keep in mind that we are moving Linares, who was our shortstop last year, to third this year, moving Coda over to become our shortstop. But the issue with Linares is his arbitration number, I think next year, is like $12 or $13 million at this point. So we're going to have a hole at third base next year. And when I look at Ethan Fox, he spent last year in Double A, hit just 229. Actually, he started in Single A, right out of college. But he can be a pretty good. He's listed as a shortstop right now, which is the wrong position for him. But he's got really good range for a third baseman and a solid arm for a third baseman. His error and his DP ratings aren't great, but he'll get to the ball and he can make the throws. He's a good bunter. He's got good, acceptable speed, acceptable base runner. He's durable as far as his injury proneness. He can be out there every day. And when you look at his batting profile, it certainly profiles as a very average major league batting profile. But we in Pittsburgh are never going to be in a situation where we're going to have an all-star at every position unless somehow we get our budget $100 million higher than it is right now, which I guess is certainly a long-term goal of ours, but it's not going to happen overnight. To me, Ethan Fox is a very potentially cost-effective replacement for us at third base for Linares next year when we're not going to be able to bring him back. And the fact that he does have real good gap power combined with real good speed, and we kind of see that in his results here. He's going to hit a lot of doubles and triples, even if he doesn't hit a ton of home runs. He's probably, best case scenario, a 240, 250 hitter, but he can go out there, play every day, play solid defense. He can lay down a bunt if we need him to. He's not a bad base runner. Being able to get a guy who's potentially going to be our starting third baseman for several years, plus a guy who we think is going to hopefully be our number 3 starter for the next 6 or 7 years, plus getting some cash back. The cost is one of the top prospects in baseball. I'm not arguing that we're not paying a lot for it, but I like this deal. Angel Aguilar, thank you for your service to the Pittsburgh Pirates organization. Best of luck to you in LA. We're bringing on Montoya, Fox, and some cash, trading away one of the top prospects in baseball. As I said, I feel pretty good about our outfielders for the next few years. Feel like we're going to have a big hole and possibly multiple big holes in the starting rotation. And Montoya, to me, is a pretty nice way to hopefully fill that potential gap. So we are going to go ahead and complete the trade. Would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments down below. Was there someone else we should have gone for? Did we give up too much? What did I do wrong? Let me know. So the big deal is complete. We assigned Montoya to AAA. We assigned Fox to AA to start the season. We're going to at least force start him at third base now. See what he looks like in terms of being a third baseman. At 6'3", he's obviously also a guy who could play first base for us. He could play a lot of outfield positions too. We'll work on trying to make him as versatile defensively as possible, but kind of viewing him as a third baseman, again, that's an area where we could have a hole next year, and he may not quite be perfectly major league ready by next season, but hopefully we can, with the excellent coaching that we have down in the minors and the big investment we make in player development, hopefully we can move him along as far as his development pretty dramatically over the next year, hopefully. And the other good news with the cash we picked up in that trade, we actually now have a little bit of money to take on some contracts if we are competitive as this season moves along. As I said at the beginning of the episode, ownership expects us to be in the playoffs, and I expect this team to be in the playoffs too. As I said, this is the last run with largely the starting rotation that we've been running with for the past four plus seasons at this point, with the exception of the addition of Longoria. So take a look and see how we are expected to perform this season. Ooh, they're expecting a rough year for the Pirates. 80-82. They don't even think we're going to be 500. 3.97 ERA is one of the better numbers in the National League, but just don't think we're going to hit too much. Score only 647 runs. They're projecting us to be the second worst offense in the National League, behind only the Brewers. So hopefully we can do better than that simulation. Looks like, not surprisingly, the expectation is for another big offensive season from Isaiah Hill. Hopefully we'll have some of the top pitchers when all is said and done. But after that long segue into that big trade that we completed, it's now time to get this 2042 season underway for the Pittsburgh Pirates. And a decent start for the Pirates, 2-2 in the 4 games that we played in the month of March. Now we've got a full month of April ahead of us. You can see certainly some mixed results in terms of our player development. Obviously very early in the season to be making any bold moves. The key thing we're going to be focusing in on over the month of April is how long Ramon Herrera is banged up with that sprained knee. And it looks like we're about a week away from Longoria to be able to potentially begin a rehab assignment in AAA, given that he went out very early in spring training on the 20th with that elbow strain of February. He's going to definitely need a few games, particularly given his fragile status, before he'll be ready to pitch at the major league level. And not the most surprising news on the Longoria front, given that he's already fragile at his young age, but still suffering from that elbow strain, not healing as fast as hoped. Unclear when he'll be ready to play again. And obviously don't want his injury to become a major issue. Does look like Herrera is finally back, so that'll be good. But just makes me feel even better about the trade we made. Particularly if Longoria is banged up, then we're going into next season really with only Rosales and Santana as established starters. And we know that Longoria, with the fact that he's fragile, is always going to be fighting with injury issues. He's probably going to be an exceptional pitcher when he is healthy. The big issue with him is just going to be keeping him healthy and being able to nurse him along. And we just opened up a little bit more money also. We traded away veteran outfielder Keilani Paraha, who was only on the major league roster because of the injury to Herrera. He refused to go back down to AAA, so rather than just waive and DFA him outright, we got 27-year-old minor league center fielder Hector Lantan in return. Not really much of a prospect. Obviously, he's 27 years old, and he really is not a major league hitter, but a decent defender. Has got a good personality to kind of have in our system, so we assigned him to AA. And while I am talking about trades, I have one that I did last month when I was offline that I need to tell people about, because some of you wanted me to draft this player a couple years ago. One of the things you've probably picked up on if you've watched me frequently is that I don't like players with difficult personalities. And we had a good prospect on our international list who we had rights for that just had a really awful personality. So what I did was I promoted him up from the international complex to one of the DSL teams so I could trade him. And the player I traded him for is a player who in the first year of this playthrough, 2038, several of you who commented thought I should have taken with the first pick in the draft. So yeah, I totally meant to talk about this. And I will right now if I can find the deal. You can see tons of promotions and stuff. Ivan Hinojosa the catcher from that 2038 draft when I had the number 1 pick in the draft. He ended up going number 3 overall to Cleveland. And you can see he really hasn't developed as well as you would expect for a player taken at that point in the draft. Still has got the good personality, still has got no speed, still looks like he could be a plus defender without a great arm. But he's going to struggle to hit at the major league level. The thing that he does have still going for him is a good eye. He's going to draw a lot of walks. But you can see that, last year he did hit 329 in high A ball, but just 218 in double A and just a $169 in triple A. So we actually have him back in double A this year, where hopefully he can get some better coaching and learn how to hit. But we did bring Hinojosa on board. He's not the prospect that he looked like. We also got minor leaguer Billy Salinas, good personality, but not really a prospect, for trading away Jose Aguirre, who low work ethic, low intelligence, low adaptability, and just doesn't seem like he's going to be an exceptional player. He's going to walk. He can make decent contact. He's going to hit some home runs. He is durable. But rather than kind of have that negative personality be influencing our minor league system, particularly when we saw we could get a guy who could definitely be a backup catcher at the major league level, unless he completely develops perfectly everywhere. I think it's going to be a struggle to have him in the lineup every day just because his bat is so mediocre and he's not brilliant defensively, but a good personality. So apologies for not sharing that I was able to do that Hinojosa trade between the end of the last episode and the start of this episode, when I was just kind of planning out that big trade that we just talked through and looking at some other things with the team and kind of getting the whole organization down to where we've got, roughly 30 guys on most of the minor league teams. I was able to pull off that Hinojosa trade when I decided I didn't really want to make a long-term commitment to that player from the international complex. So with the trade away, that lets us put Herrera back on the team. He will presumably go back into being our starting center fielder and hopefully sending Carbajal to the bench, which is exactly what he does. Herrera batting 5th against righties and 2nd against lefties. So interested in seeing what this team can do. 5-4 start is certainly acceptable. If we play .555 baseball, we're probably a playoff team, and that's where we want to be. And it looks like the injuries might be a little tougher this year than they have been in some of the previous seasons with these young and relatively healthy Pirates that we've had. Edwin Campos, you may remember, he's a player making a ton of money that we picked up in a trade with the Cubs during the offseason simply because he was extremely popular. He has not been good in our bullpen, allowing 10 hits over 4 1/3 innings. He's wrecked physically, and now he's out for 6 weeks with a strained forearm. So Campos is going to head to the IL, joining Longoria, whose injury time is still unknown with that elbow strain. And we'll find a replacement in AAA. And the AAA season still hasn't even started yet here on April 8th, so we don't have any performance information to look at people with. Given that Montoya's still got so much development to do and he hasn't even pitched yet this year, we're hoping that we kind of moved him into AAA for one, based on what he did in the majors. He's certainly ready for AAA. But two, we have probably the best pitching coach in our system at the AAA level with Tetsuya Utsumi, who we hired this past offseason. He's legendary at teaching pitching, excellent with development, outstanding with mechanics, and legendary handling aging. and he's also going to have an excellent relationship with Montoya. So we thought that that was a place where hopefully in terms of Montoya's development, we'll be able to get every little bit out of him. So want him to spend some time there, even though he probably is technically ready. So we're going to bring up Jorge Melendez. This is a minor league free agent signing we made a couple months ago. He's kind of a replacement level guy at the major league level, but a good personality. He could start or relieve for us. Doesn't have a ton of control. He walked 49 batters in 79 and 2/3 innings for the Orioles last season, as you can see there. But for a back end guy in our bullpen, until hopefully we can get Longoria back, I think we could certainly do worse than Melendez as a middle reliever. And the injuries just keep coming. Victor Serrano, starting second baseman, day-to-day with back tightness, not a big issue, but he also just suffered a concussion that is going to keep him out for 2 weeks. So we are going to have to put him on the IL. Hope he can bounce back from that sooner rather than later. We do have decent infield depth at AAA right now. Was kind of trying to train up one of the guys we sent down, Flavio Avanzi, to play third base a little better. He's also not the greatest bat in the world, so probably we'll just let him continue to play down there. But we've got a lot of veteran options who we've signed to minor league deals down there to potentially bring up. And I think we're going to go with Ivan Nunez, 27-year-old. He's fragile, very good defensively, not much of a hitter. You'll see that that's a pretty consistent theme among a lot of our infielders, for the good and the bad of it. But not sure. He very well with the defense he plays. He could conceivably step right in as the starting second baseman over Jaden Dixon or perhaps even Jose Cuevas. Dixon, better hitter, probably not quite as good defensively. I'd probably lean towards Dixon if it was my choice, but we'll see what Vasquez says. Yeah, Vasquez going with the glove with Nunez. I may actually change that up a bit. Nunez can't really hit against anybody, but he's a little better against lefties, I guess. And then Dixon is a left-handed batter. Certainly better against righties. So I'm actually going to overrule him and give Dixon a little playing time as a second baseman. And I still want to get Barley a few at-bats as a first baseman too. So we'll see how things go over the next couple of weeks. Hopefully we can have Serrano and Longoria back before the end of April. But I was going to say I'd feel a lot more confident that Serrano's going to be back, but he's coming back from a concussion too. There's no guarantees that there's not going to be delays and issues trying to bounce back from that either. And we've got some good news, which is we're well in need of, because the Pirates have been struggling here over the last week or so. Looking at the schedule, you can see we were off to a pretty good start, but since Saturday the 12th, actually even more, if you just look this past week, we lost 4 in a row, then won 1 against Cincinnati, and then lost another one to them today. So we've lost 2 consecutive series, getting swept by the Nats, and then losing 2 of 3 on the road at Cincinnati. But the good news is that Longoria is ready to begin a rehab assignment. He's back. He's relatively healthy. He's still only fragile. We'll see what he looks like. But we are going to send him on a rehab assignment. Going to actually be even more conservative than usual with him, since he really had no spring training. Put him on a 50 pitch count for his first start. Probably will bump it up to 65 or so for his second start, 80 for his third start down there. And then maybe we can, if he's healthy and he kind of progresses through those 3 starts, have him at a 90 pitch count in his 4th start of the year. And hopefully that will be at the major league level. But we want to give him a little time to build himself back up, since he's already fragile physically and he really had no spring training at all. And Serrano is also ready to come back off the IL, so it looks like he bounced back as well as you could hope from that concussion. Nunez, as expected, did not hit much, a buck 76 and 17 at bats while he was splitting time at second base with Dixon. Dixon hitting 283 on the year. He's definitely a better bat. So we will send Nunez back down to AAA, Mr. Serrano back to the majors, and we will get him into the starting lineup as well. And the rehab assignment for Luis Longoria not going well. He's been reasonably effective in his 2 starts, but pitched yesterday and is now out with a sore back for a week. Not the optimal situation with the health struggles that he is beginning to have in these early stages of his hopefully long career. And it was a rough April for the Pirates. You can see we're 13 and 18, 8 games back. Not good. 11 and 16 during the month of April. We're 11th in the National League in runs scored, so doing better than people expected us to in that way, but we're 8th in runs allowed, so not performing as well as expected. Our starters ERA is actually 5th, but we've had the worst bullpen in the entire National League at this point. Our defense has been solid. I might have expected it to be a little better. We've definitely focused on our defense. It's still early in the year, not panic time yet, but we certainly will feel a lot better about this team if we're able to have a winning record in the month of May, and if we're also able to hopefully get Mr. Longoria back at some point. Still got another 4 days that he's going to be dealing with that injury. We'll see what he looks like at that point. Hopefully he can get back and start a couple more games down in AAA and slowly build up his stamina. And Ricky Gotti just reached out looking for a contract extension. As we talked about, it's very unlikely we're going to be able to retain him. 3-2 this year with a 3.60 ERA, 57 strikeouts over 50 innings. So he's kind of putting up another typical Ricky Gotti type of year. The concern is that he's looking for over $26 million a year now, so just absolutely no way we can possibly go there. As we've talked about, my hope is that this ends up being a playoff team, even though we are off to a bad start right now. When we get Longoria back, that's going to be a big boost, hopefully, for the rotation. But with Gotti, if the season goes sideways, we do have the option to trade him before the trade deadline. Worst case scenario is we keep him, make him a qualifying offer, and presumably he's going to sign a long and lucrative contract with somebody. It'd probably be a pick at the end of the first round, between the first and the second round, I would assume, on him most likely. So, that's kind of the worst case scenario. If we do, we'll get something for him through the qualifying offer. But if we find ourselves in mid-July with a winning percentage in the neighborhood of where we are right now at 439, might be time to see if we can get more for him in trade than we're going to get in the draft pick down the line. But hopefully the season will not materialize away there where that becomes a potential decision that we'll have to make. And the Pirates have been playing some incredible baseball of late. You'll see we've got our record up to 29 and 26, only 3.5 games back, as the Cardinals have also been struggling. But you look at this run in the month of May, especially the last couple of weeks, swept a series at Milwaukee. Or actually, we didn't. We took 3 out of 4 at Milwaukee. Then we were swept by the White Sox. But since then, we have won 8 in a row, including 5 against St. Louis. So that's obviously why we've been able to make up so much ground on them. Took 3 at home against Cincinnati and then 5 at home against St. Louis. So clearly that's the reason why we have been able to tighten up on the standings on both the Cardinals and the Reds. 8 wins in a row. We're still a game and a half out of the wild card at this point, 3.5 out in the division. But playing much better here in the month of May. And we are also about to bring Mr. Longoria up. He's off his rehab assignment. We just actually kept him in AAA a little bit longer. He hasn't been particularly impressive down there if you look at his 5.68 ERA. But if you look at his 35 strikeouts over 19 innings and only 14 hits allowed, his BABIP is 364. Have to think that that's really just bad luck. His Sierra has been 0.90. He's definitely ready to come up. Since he's going to go into the rotation, we're going to give him another day or two just so we don't waste a roster spot on him until we need to. But unless they come back and tell us he's hurt again, we will be bringing him up pretty soon. Jose Montoya checking in on the big trade acquisition. 3-3 with a 4.31 ERA. Obviously, he's spent most of his career at a professional level in high A ball, despite the fact that he did pitch that game for the Angels at the end of last year. So he's got work to do. Doesn't look like he's really improved too much yet, but we're going to get a scouting report on him shortly. Henry Gonzalez, pretty much trained up to what he's going to be at first base at this point, so maybe time to move him back to the outfield. Hitting 281, still just doesn't have a ton of home run power. We're hoping that last piece will develop for him. He's certainly going to be up in the majors at some point this year, but want to give him the best chance possible to develop. And then we'll also check in quickly on our potential future third baseman, Ethan Fox. Looks like he's doing a pretty decent job learning how to play that position. Still not hitting too much, just 221 thus far down in Double-A. But hopefully our hitting coach and our manager can work with him and not just get him trained up to play third effectively, but also hopefully reach his full potential as far as his bat. And with Longoria coming back, we've got a decision to make with our pitching staff now that we're completely healthy. We had thought we might be moving on from Nick Jarmone, who was the Rule 5 draft pick, but he's been pretty darn good. 2.53 ERA over 32 innings. He's also a younger player. Good personality, could start in a pinch, so no way that we're going to move on from him. The guy that we may actually need to move on from is Edwin Campos, who is back from the IL now. Again, this is the guy who we traded for simply because he was extremely popular. He does have option years left, so we can try to send him to the minors as a guy who's making $22 million, even though we're only paying 10% of that, who has a pretty established track record, is 11 years in the major leagues, former All-Star, former champion. Unlikely that he will take that demotion, but I don't really know who else we'd want to move on from him. Manny Collazo has been disappointing as our closer, but still look at the profile that he has as a pitcher and think that he is going to be a pretty important player for us going forward. So I'm going to try to see if Campos will accept a demotion, which he refuses. So we're probably going to have to trade him away, which is going to result in a hit to fan interest. But you can see when we've been playing better, we have started getting more fans in the seats. If this team plays better, which Longoria I think will help us with, we can probably overcome the loss of Mr. Campos. We could send Heriberto Rosales down. He still has, one option year left. I tend to think I want to keep Rosales as our number 5 starter and move Gaylord back into the bullpen, even though that's probably the opposite of what our manager will do. I think we're going to see what we can get for a trade. Get in a trade for Mr. Campos, and I'm guessing it's not going to be too much that we're going to be interested in. Not much at all. We can get Jose Griego from the Mets. a meh first baseman, no speed, not great defensively, kind of an average-ish major league hitter. Does have a little bit of pop in the bat. Importantly, he's got 2 option years left, though, so we can... he was a Rule 5 draft pick, though. I forget how the rules work. If the Mets trade him to us, I think we can send him down then. I'm going to do this trade just to figure that out for sure. And if we lose him, we lose him. The main thing is getting Campos off the team. We'll see if the Mets will retain his entire contract, which they will. All right, well, now let's see if we can get some more money out of you. And we've actually pieced the deal together. We'll get a little cash from the Mets. Griego, Felix Bath, who is kind of a 4A kind of pitcher in a best-case scenario. He's in Double-A right now. Good personality. He's got some stamina. Don't think he's ever really going to be a major leaguer. And then in addition to Campos, we have to get up Jesus Soberall, who I don't think is quite as good a prospect as Bath, even though he is younger. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Again, I just can't remember if we trade for a Rule 5 guy, do we also have to keep him up or can we send him down? So quite honestly, I just want to get rid of Campos' salary, even though the fans will be upset. I think picking up Bath for Soberall is positive. We get a little cash, and I'll definitely know the answer as far as trading for someone who's a Rule 5 pick. And it does make sense. We can't send Griego down to AAA. Has to be on the active roster. It would obviously be something that teams could game the system, pick up a guy in the Rule 5, trade him to somebody else. Actually, just trade both of the Rule 5 players that you picked up for each other, and then you can send them down to the minors. So it does make sense that we have to keep him up. We don't really have any desire to keep Mr. Griego, so we will release him back to Tampa Bay. We did get the salary of Campos off our books to open up a spot for Longoria. We've got Bath, who we've assigned to Double-A at this point. And let's see if we can keep Mr. Longoria healthy. We are going to up his pitch count a little bit, but only to 80 for his first couple starts. Hopefully we can stretch him out to 90 by mid-June, but I've got to baby him. We want to keep him as healthy as possible, get as many games out of him, but certainly we're above 500. He's back now. Looking at the injured list, there's nothing at the major league level at this point. So hopefully these last couple days of May, we can continue to play very well. I am going to change one thing, though. I'm going to force Gaylord to be a reliever, although he has been pretty effective. I'm always fearful of guys whose third pitch isn't that great, but he's 4-2 with a 2.66 ERA. Not that Rosales has been bad as a pitcher. He's 5-4 with a 3.84 ERA, but as long as Greg Gaylord's playing real well, I think I'm going to keep him in the rotation for the time being. And another month in the books, and May was certainly better than April. Take a look at the team stats here. 18-10 record in May, which pushed us over 500 for the year, although we are 5 games back. Still 12th in the National League in runs scored, so we've actually dropped back a spot. So we're still struggling to score runs. Runs allowed, we're 6th. Starters ERA is up to 4th. Hopefully that'll be getting even better with Longoria pitching every 5th day. I feel like, we're above 500. We, for the time being, have gotten through the injury to Longoria. There's nobody else on the Major League roster that's even banged up right now. The hope is to put another well above 500 month together here in June. And if we can do that, we'll be feeling pretty good as we get closer to the draft and the trade deadline. We made it to mid-June. It's kind of been win one, lose one for the Pirates. Haven't really been able to make up any ground on the Cardinals, and in fact have lost some ground to them over the past couple of weeks. You can see we're in second place in the division, 7.5 back though, and we're 3 behind in the wild card race, and we'd have to not just get past the Nationals, but also past the Braves to get into that third wild card hole. So we're holding our own, but it would obviously be nice to have a stronger month, stronger finish to this month. See, we swept San Diego, or we took 3 out of 4 in San Diego. Then we lost 2 out of 3 to Washington. Split a 4-game series with the Cubs, and now we just lost 2 out of 3 to St. Louis. So hopefully we can get healthy. We've got a long homestand over the next week, 6 games against Milwaukee and Boston. Would love to take both of those series before we head out on the road to finish off the month of June. And we made it to our midseason review time. You can see that Henry Gonzalez has moved up a little bit. He's now viewed as a top 10 prospect. What happened? Interesting to see what happened with Aguiar. He's not listed in the top 10 anymore. Maybe he's hurt. Or is he in the majors? Maybe he's in the majors. If he's fallen off that dramatically, that would make me feel even better about the trade, but I'm guessing he's just in the majors. Yeah, looks like he's right up with the Angels. He's hitting pretty well. Oh my goodness. 302 batting average and 21 homers and 222 at bats. So he is definitely making a difference. They did not waste any time bringing him up to the majors. Kind of interesting that he was one of the younger players in the deal. We still got the 2 guys we picked up in the minors. Can check in on them. Also check in first on our midseason goals, though. Mr. Nutting not happy that we're not on the way to the playoffs if the season were to end today, even though we are above 500. Not happy that we haven't upgraded at second base. Does like that we added Tony Jones. Wants more people in the stands. Generally happy with our progress, which is good because I believe we are in the last year of our contract at this point. Yeah, our contract ends at the end of this season, so hopefully we'll get an extension because kind of having a fun time playing through here, figuring out how to try to make it work with the Pirates. I'm checking in on Montoya. He's been good. You can see his slider has kind of moved up a notch, but the ceiling on his slider has also come back a notch, according to our scout. Would certainly love if he can get that up to at least be a 50. Would love it if he gets it up to a 55 in his 3 very good to above average pitches. He's 6-4 with a 3.70 ERA, so he's getting close to being major league ready, and he's actually improved to be the number 53 prospect. So he's moved up since we brought him on board. And then Ethan Fox learning how to play third, and he's actually hitting a little better than he had previously in AA last year when he was with the Angels system, hitting 268 with 8 homers and 228 at bats. Probably will look to get him up to AAA at some point. And then we'll check in on Gonzalez, who's now number 10, our top prospect. Still not hitting many homers, batting 259 in AAA, only 5 home runs so far, although he does have 20 doubles. So hopefully by the end of this year, or really hopefully over the next couple of months, he'll develop that home run stroke a little better. You can see that his ceiling on that, I think, has come down a little bit. Really hasn't improved his ability to hit homers, but would be definitely help make him an even more potentially fearsome offensive player if he's a 25 to 30 home run guy rather than a 15 kind of home run guy, which is what he's kind of looking like he might be right now. So hopefully we can continue to develop him. And another month is in the books. We've made it to the end of June. We are now on July 1st, checking in on the team. Had a winning record in June, not as good as we would have hoped. 10 games back in the division, back up to 11th in runs scored, 4th in runs allowed. So the pitching staff definitely seems to have stabilized, 3rd in starter ERA now. And certainly having Mr. Longoria on board has helped with that. Only one decision in his 6 starts, 1-0 record, but a 1.41 ERA over 32 innings pitched. And you can see Santana, Gotti, Gonzalez, and Gaylord all doing fine, although Gaylord's ERA has actually climbed by a run over the past month. Maybe time to think about switching him for Gonzalez. I actually think I am going to do that. That was kind of my inclination, but he was pitching so well, didn't want to upset the apple cart, but we are going to go back to forcing Mr. Gaylord to be a reliever, where I think he can, join Helton and Jones and Collazo and Jarman is a real big contributor to the team. That should put Heriberto. Oh, now Tony Jones is. No, I want Rosales. You're gonna force me to force all these guys to be relievers. I have my own insane method for who I want my pitchers to be. How dare you dispute me? I might actually let Omar Gaona pitch as a starter for a while just because we get so few innings out of him. Interested in seeing what he can potentially do as a starter. He has started very occasionally for us in the past. We actually have got as many innings out of him this year midway through the season as we typically do over a full season. But we'll see what he can do in the bullpen. But if he's not successful, I am going to get Rosales back into the rotation in that 5 spot. That's where he has resided for most of the 4.5 years that we have been managing this team. And that's where we want him to be. But you can see the pitchers doing well. Gotti still going to be looking for, I'm sure, an ungodly amount of money. Down to $23.7 million, still nothing that we can afford. Bullpen generally doing well. Check in on the players, and this is where we're going to see a lot more variability. Not a surprise to see Isaiah Hill as our top WAR player, 293 average, 24 homers, 72 ribbies. Tony Cota, 2.7 WAR. He's batting .313. Boy, I think it's obviously just luck to have him batting .313 with that batting profile, but with his glove, if he can, bat within 50 points of .313, he's an incredibly valuable player. Good that we've got Ramon Herrera back in center field. His batting average just .240 this year, but is hitting for some power. Luis Linares, third baseman for now. Wonder what his arbitration number looks like. It's come down a little bit, but still at $10.5 million. Don't know that we can have a .238 hitting third baseman, even though he does have a good glove back for $10 million. Part of the reason we wanted to pick up the third baseman in that trade earlier. Alfredo Velasquez finally getting some serious playing time, hitting just .227, but he does have 20 homers and 278 at-bats. Never doubted that he could hit the ball over the fence. Giovanni Venturini hitting .267 as a backup catcher. Alex Perkins, kind of a sophomore slump after Rookie of the Year last year, hitting just .213 with 11 homers. Victor Serrano has had some injuries, batting just a .187 as our second baseman. Carbajal hitting .322 in limited time. Jaden Dixon, .246. John Herrera hitting just .231 with 4 homers. You may remember this is the guy we traded for. We don't think we're going to be able to keep him because his arbitration number is 12.5 last year. But he had been a very good offensive player while being a bit above average defensively catcher when he was with Texas. And he's just hitting a lot worse for us as our everyday starter. So that's been a disappointment. Luis Flores, the Rule 5 acquisition, great personality, can bunt, has some speed, interesting hitter, more of a contact hitter than a home run hitter. He's holding his own in the majors, 269 average, only one home run, but hasn't been a total disaster. Our first basemen in general, though, have struggled. Jose Cuevas, who we thought would be at least a useful hitter, batting just 230 with 2 home runs, playing some DH and first for us. And then Sean Barley, not a lot of power either. 3 home runs and 190 at-bats with a 268 average as he makes his major league debut. So certainly feel like we may look to improve our hitters when we get into the month of July and we really take a hard look at where we are and what we need to add to get to where we want to be. And obviously we've got some options down in the minor league system, not just with bats, but with arms that may be ready to help us. So it hasn't been an exceptional start to the season. As I talked about, we're 10 games behind the Cardinals in the division at this point. But we're 4th in the race for the wild card, only a game and a half out of the wild card spot. So definitely have an opportunity, particularly if we bring up some young players and or make some trades for some guys who can help us this year to make a run at a playoff spot. And if we can get into the playoffs, you never know what's going to happen when you can get there. So that's why we want to be in the postseason when all is said and done. We'll focus on the draft and the trade deadline and international amateur free agents in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.